Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest edition of the Entertainment Show, where we look at upcoming TV series and movies premiering in Ireland this upcoming month. And our special episode, our TV premiere that we're talking about this week, is actually debuting this evening, later on tonight on Sky Atlantic here in Ireland. It's debuting at 9 o'clock. It's called Yellowjackets. It's got to do with a very talented high school soccer team, a girls' soccer team, who were the misfortunes to be the accidents of a plane crash deep in the Ontario sort of wilderness, and it becomes a horror sort of survival story in terms of what these girls have to go through to survive the sort of wilderness, and then it brings them into sort of the future in terms of those memories, scars, those sort of relationships of those girls that survived and what they went through. My guest this evening is the one and only Sophie Nelisse. She played the teen Shauna in Yellowjackets. And Sophie, an interesting concept, I suppose. High school girls soccer team, talented sort of a team, a girls team as such. Victims of a plane crash. We hear these sort of stories in the news about talented soccer teams but there's sort of grim sort of fatality sort of scenarios. This is a scenario where it's almost a wilderness sort of horror thing, where a lush sort of landscape, a lush environment, everything going well, and it's from, I suppose, heights of glory to the depths of despair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what really interested me about the script. It was like, first of all, I think it touches many different genres, but I do love that it taps into horror a little bit, but also psychological thriller, because I love to see the progression of these girls as they're stuck in the wilderness, like how it affects your mental health and the extremes that they end up going through because they've been stuck there for so long, and how some friendships girls that were together before the plane crash, how it will affect those friendships and they'll fall apart, and how other relationships will come together and some girls will grow together. And yeah, I love that but it's also, even though it's very dark and it's very intense, there is also some lightness to it and some funny moments, especially with like the older cast, that they kind of, you can tell that they have trauma that has followed them throughout their years, but there's also some funnier moments and there's some loving moments also in there. So it taps into a lot of different genres.
And I suppose, Sophie, it's the premiere there tonight, the pilot sort of episode as such. And just got to ask you, do we see much of your soccer skills on show there tonight? Do we see you dribbling a ball in terms of the sort of start? And is Shauna a decent enough soccer player?
I think Shauna is one of the best on the team. We do get to see a little at the beginning, and then that's it. It's all you see in the show. Sadly, I really enjoyed it. I played soccer growing up when I was young, and we had to rehearse. I know all the other girls hated it. I had so much fun doing it, but we had to rehearse for like 2 weeks. We learned to like dribble and do some sort of skills. But that's all you see. All the other girls are happy that we don't have to do it for the rest of the show, but I think it was really fun.
Yeah, and tell me, in terms of airplane crashes, is that sort of something that flights, have you any sort of fear or sort of flying? Would that, as a child growing up, would you have any sort of horrors or nightmares in terms of airplane crash? And what's it like to act in an airplane sort of crash, to sort of act that sort of sequence, or horror sort of sequence that you're going to be involved in an airplane crash? Is it what you sort of think about in terms of imagine what it might like be? Dare I say, you might have never imagined it before in your life.
I mean, I used to be scared when I was like super young, when I'd never taken the plane. And then growing up, I had to take the plane all the time to travel. So I kind of like overcame my fear pretty quickly. I've never been scared, even when it gets like a little like turbulation, I guess. I'm not so worried. But doing the plane crash was very intense because like they had put us on these stands, or they had built something that made the plane like literally go crooked and like move and shake. So that was a little scary because it felt extremely real. And then when we shot the second episode and we got in the forest and we'd seen the big plane crash, I mean, they just did such a great job of making it look so realistic. And we did get a little claustrophobic. And what really kicked in for me is when all the other girls started acting and started screaming, and it just felt so real and heartbreaking and scary. It was like we shot that whole sequence for 2 days. And it was a lot, but it helped us get into characters, obviously. And now I feel like that now I'm a little more scared when I get onto a plane, just because of like the irony, I guess, of it all. I feel like if I'm to die some way, if I'm young, it has to be in a plane crash, just because of like the irony of the show. But yeah, I try not to think about it too much, but we've all kind of imagined what it'd be like in our heads, and it's not something that you want to go through for sure.
And Sophie, what's it like shooting in the cold of British Columbia, out in out in that sort of wilderness? It's almost, you almost feel like you're mimic in the real thing, in terms of the scenes and sequences. Was it in the depth of winter that you shot it?
No, actually, we were super lucky. I mean, I'm kind of used to it because I come from Montreal, so we get a lot of snow. I've shot a lot of things here, which I've worked in some very cold conditions, so I was a little used to it. But we shot through from May to end of September, so we got like actually the summer period, which was really nice. And it wasn't too cold, and they were also keeping us warm. It was ironic though, because all of like the scenes when we have the less clothing and we're like in the water were all shot like in September, which is like when it started to get cold. So towards the end of the shooting, it got really cold. But I mean, obviously they cover us with like blankets and coats and hot shots, but without revealing any spoilers, if there is a second season, you can only imagine that it will get colder and colder, and so we will then be shooting in some even colder situations, which I'm not so excited for, but again, it helps us get into character.
And I suppose, Sophia, we see the sort of teen element of the character and we see the adult element of the character 25 years later on. So in terms of, you play a teen sort of Shauna, so how do you have to sort of relate to the adult version of a Shauna as well, do you?
Mhm. I think it was easier for me, actually. We had to go through, well, I had to go through obviously some physical changes because I'm blonde with blue eyes, and in the show I'm like brown with brown eyes. Um, and I also noticed when we first started talking that we have quite a different like pitch in our voice. Like she speaks way higher and I speak quite lower. So we kind of had to adjust to sort of meet in the middle and kind of sort of sound the same. Um, but as for like the storyline, what's interesting is that I think it's harder for her because she has to adjust to what I went through, and my character can only live in the present moment. You know what I mean? Like I don't know where she's gonna end up, so I can only play what Teen Shauna is going through, not knowing how she'll end up because she's not there yet. As opposed to adult Shauna has to grab onto what I did, if that makes any sense. I mean,
Mm.
but we would obviously go for coffee once in a while, just chat about, how the progression has been going, if we're still on the same page concerning the character. Um, but it was definitely interesting because we have no scenes together. We're never on set together. I've never seen her act like on set. So we were just like crossing your fingers, trusting the directors to make it, to make it work. And it's fun for me also because I get to watch the show as a spectator as well. Like I've shot my scenes, but I haven't seen anything from what they've done, like on the adult side. So it's kind of fun when I watch the show. I'm kind of watching a new show with you guys.
And I suppose, Sophia, in terms of your character Shauna, how would you describe her?
I think Shauna has a very interesting progression through the story. She starts off quite shy and has kind of resigned herself to be Jackie's sidekick, which is her best friend. And she doesn't speak much. She's an introvert. And I think when she lands in the forest, she kind of comes into her own and finds her voice and starts standing up for herself a little more. And yeah, she's made some mistakes which will follow her, and she has this guilt that's always lying on top of her shoulders. But yeah, you'll really see her grow into her own and start speaking for herself as the show goes on. And I think, yeah.
And I suppose, Sophia, finally, before I let you go for the final 30 seconds, you might enlighten all our audience here in Ireland why they should tune in tonight, for the premiere of Yellowjackets on Sky Atlantic at 9 p.m. Over to you, Sophia.
I think because it's a show that's very unique, that makes you go through a ton of different emotions, and it's just very captivating, and you want to know more, and I think you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. And the first episode kind of sets everything, but then second episode, and as you tune in for more, it just gets crazier and crazier and even more intense, and I think people will have just a lot of fun watching it.
Cheers, Sophia. Take care and best of luck.
Thank you.